Hey everyone, Steve Adubato. This is Media Matters because media matters a lot. I'll tell you a guy who knows that. Doug Doyle, my good friend from WBGO. He's the news director at WBGO, an award-winning broadcaster, producer, journalist. Doug, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, Steve. Yourself?
Doing great. Now, let's get this out of the way. I see Don Newcomb
That's
over your
correct.
right shoulder, the great late Roberto Clemente, and
Right.
the Yogi Berra. Is that right?
Yep. It's a Newark Bears Yogi Berra jersey. It's a Newark Eagles Don Newcomb jersey, and it's a Pittsburgh Pirates Roberto Clemente jersey.
Now, have you ever been to Pittsburgh?
As you know, that I was born not far from there, and still root for all the teams. And my favorite player of all time is still around, Manny Sanguian. Went to see him being inducted into the Pirates Hall of Fame last year, and he was in a wheelchair, but I still had my Manny shirt on. I've never
Hold on one
called.
second. Manny, was he number 32?
He was number 35.
Shoot, okay, I thought I had that right. He was in the wheelchair. Go ahead. I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Well, I had his jersey, and I made sure that I had very close seats, and yelled out to him. He saw me. I said, "Manny, you're the best," and that's all I really needed in life. I met him once, and my lady Rose says I turned into an 8-year-old when I met him. Like, there he is. He's right there. And it was during the Roberto Clemente musical that was going on in Pittsburgh, and I bought Manny a drink. His daughter was there, and I said, "Hey, what does your dad like to drink?" And she said, "Well, he likes wine." I said, "Oh, okay." So I got him wine, and there he is. At that time, he's a little on the not healthy side, put it that way, and he was walking down very slowly, and he had his sippy cup with the wine that I had got him. Life was complete that I had bought the man who I idolized and became a catcher because of, including my dad. It just it just meant everything to me.
Well, let me ask you this. We're here to talk about media, but I'm gonna now that you opened up, you can't do this. You can't sports Pandora's box. I have a section in this wacky library I have. It's called the Yankee section.
hmm
I'm looking at one of my favorite books of all time, written by the great Jane Levy, who I interviewed on our public television series One on One. And she wrote a great book on if I had ever met him, I would have been you were 8 years old, I would have been like about a 4 year old. If I ever met, in my view, the greatest Yankee of all time, and I know who a lot of people think it is, but in the 60s, 70s for me, who was it, Doug?
I would have to say it's got to be Mickey Mantle, right?
I mean, I idolized him like a mythical kind of thing. And then when I found out stuff about Mickey Mantle, I was like, he did.
Well, I
He's
have a story for you about Mickey Mantle because we're talking about the media, right? And he hated the media. So when I met him, it was in Atlantic City, right?
Was that a
And
card signing
uh, it was it
or a
was the fir-
casino opening when he was working with Willie Mays? They were opening
right.
casinos. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I went up to him and I said, "Do you mind if I interview you?" And he said no, but he says you got to know, I hate people like you, something like that. But he was
Mickey
very
Mantle,
nice.
he talked to you, Doug?
Yeah, he was very nice, and we had a good conversation, and he even signed a card for me at the end, one of those casino cards that they had with his picture on it.
Remember Major League? It's so interesting. You talk about media. Willie Mays and Mickey Mantle got fined or something by Major League Baseball for working with casinos. Has something to do with gambling. Anyway, let's shift gears.
Wait, I have one more story. Since you
We got
brought
about
up
a
Willie,
million, but go ahead.
Since you brought up Willie Mays, I sat right next to Willie Mays at a golf tournament at my college, Penn State. Now, this was the charity golf tournament run by the now infamous former defensive coordinator of the Penn State Nittany Lions, Jerry
No, not
Sandusky.
Sandusky.
Yes. And so Sandusky at that time was revered in the community, right? Before all the stuff
He
came
was
out
on Joe
about him.
Paterno's staff.
Yeah. And so I sat next to Willie Mays and Jerry Sandusky, and I was a young reporter working as a student reporter, and I covered that golf tournament event and shared pleasantries with the great Willie Mays and I'll never forget it.
Hey, Doug, when are you going to write a book about your life in media and journalism?
You see, you have to have someone who wants to read it before you actually do something
Hold
like
on, I
that.
just knocked my microphone over. Doug, I wrote a book and I don't care who reads it.
See, you have a following. See, so people know you. People see you on TV all the time. They would be going, Doug, who has written a
No,
book? But I would have great stories to tell.
you have the best. Hey, Doug, let's do this. This is again produced by the Adubato Center for Media Matters. This podcast is produced by the Adubato Center for Media Leadership, a private family foundation that was established to produce this series, to provide media scholarships for students who are either entrepreneurial, passionate, or crazy enough to go into media in these days. And in all candor, Doug, you know media, you know radio better than most. How optimistic are you about the future of independent public media that does what it needs to do to inform the people? No, we're not the enemy of the people, as Jim Acosta's book says, but to inform people in a meaningful way without self-censorship, loaded question, I know, or censorship from government or corporate sources, you say?
I
You
say
have
it's gonna be a rough road ahead for public media because money moves the world, right? And if you don't have funds, you can't create programming that is essential to make everything happen. So as public TV, public radio stations continue to cut back on their staff members, on their commitments to local community events, you're going to see an evaporation of what we're used to. And that's especially in public TV and radio, the long form, real investigative type reports, the human interest stories, because that takes time and that takes money and that takes a staff. And when the money dries up, there are no alternatives but to reduce that. So unless there is a change in focus and a change and demand from the public to have public stations out there. And in places like the Midwest, they really count on public radio and they public television. Those are huge areas that, there's so many rural areas. That's all they have are these radio stations to provide great programming. So I'm not totally optimistic that this is going to lead to anything unless the public gets out and demands more from their stations. And that still might not be enough, Steve.
Well, by the way, Doug, I was remiss. Let folks know what you are producing and putting out there and where people can find it. Go ahead.
Well, WBGO can be found online at WBGO.org, 88.3 FM on the radio, but we're worldwide. You can listen to us on the app. It's a free app, and you can catch all our shows, all our podcasts, all the interviews. The podcasts that I'm associated are the WBGO Journal. That's a public affairs show that you've heard Steve Adubato on many times. We've also have Sports Jam. Obviously, Steve and I are both sports fans. Some of my most recent guests include Henrik Lundqvist and Harry Carson. And we just did the flag football, the Women's Flag Football League, the ECAC. And I spoke to Callie Brownson, who used to be the Cleveland Browns assistant coach.
What?
And now, yeah, and now is the flag advisor for the Jets. And she's part of USA's football league. And there's this new ECAC league, and they're giving scholarships starting this spring to places like Montclair State, Kane University, FDU. So your young women can now possibly, through flag football, get a scholarship from one of the local universities here in New Jersey and in New York.
Good stuff. Hey, Doug, let me ask you. I never asked you this in all the interviews that I've done with you, that you've done with me. I never asked you this. I know the answer for me why media and journalism, mostly because I lost my seat in the state legislature when I was 27 years of age and had to find a different career. And I was like, oh, yeah, that TV thing makes sense. And so that was the beginning. Um, But you studied. I did not study journalism and media. You were at Penn State. You studied media journalism. You were a student journalist there. Why media for you, Doug Doyle?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of the answers revolve back to sports. After I was cut 2 days before the baseball season started,
As a
I just,
catcher?
as a catcher, I was a walk-on, and Shorty Stoner was the coach, and he said, "Doug, you're of equal ability of the catcher we have on scholarship. That means he stays, you go." And it was as simple as that. And I was let go 2 days before the season, so I started covering them. Right? I started doing Penn State baseball. I was the play-by-play announcer covering a team that I had just been let go from. And so that eventually led into wanting to do news because news to me became much more interesting than sports to report on because it was different every day. How many questions can you ask after a sporting event? Four, five, six. You see it all the time. How do you feel? Take us through the play. It gets to be monotonous. But news every day is something different. And so that's why I started doing news early on and have been doing it now for almost 40 plus years.
Yeah, and I will say this. I told my mom this recently. And by the way, if my mom could ever figure out how to find our podcast, which will be on Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, a whole bunch of other platforms, YouTube, etc. But I told my mom this. I did an interview with, or Doug on the Journal, WBGO Journal, did an interview with me about my late dad, and I was really mad at Doug, and he doesn't realize this, um, because he pulled an Oprah on me. Do you know what I mean?
Made you cry.
You mean I was mad at you for that? And the reason why I'm actually mentioning this is because, if I'm not mistaken, Doug, that was I'll call it a long form interview. Right?
Hmm.
It was,
Certainly was.
we were not on a clock. Well, you were because it was a half-hour program. This is where I'm going with this. You mentioned before the public, you didn't say clamoring, but the public demanding quality, independent, meaningful media and journalism. Do you believe there's a significant audience for long form, substantive, and I don't mean clickbait stuff. I don't mean TikTok, no disrespect to TikTok, Instagram. I sit there sometimes looking at weird sports videos over and over. My wife is looking at cat videos, dog videos. I don't mean that. I'm talking about this. To what degree do you believe, Doug Doyle, and you've been doing it better than most for a long time, to what degree is this human conversation not on the clock? To what degree is there a demand for it in your view?
I think more than ever. I think you can see the fact that people crave documentaries now more than ever. I think because of COVID, people were looking for information on television. And I think they started to realize, hey, there were some interesting documentaries, whether the topic be music, whether it be crime, whether it be sports, anything that they're interested in, you can engage the public. They want that kind of format. They can take it on the train with them. They can take it on the bus with them, a long ride. They're going to find the podcast that they feel, most suit their needs. But I think more than ever, people enjoy long form programming. They're engaged when it's our job as the interviewer to create
Hmm.
great programming. And how do you do that? By simply getting the right guests,
Okay.
asking the right questions, and turning it into a conversation, not an interview, right? It's got to be the back and forth that's going on between your guest. The best comment that I'll ever get about Sports Jam is, I'm not a big sports fan, but I love your show, Doug, because
Yeah, by the way,
it's
I'm sorry, we didn't plug Sports Jam as one of Doug's gems, media gems. I interrupted you though? Someone said, I'm not even into sports, but I love the program.
yeah. So I mean, and that's important to me because it's not all about X's and O's because there are so many other shows that are going to look into football and basketball and baseball better than I could ever do. But you're going to get the inside information. You're going to get what makes a person tick. You're going to find out about their family. When you talk, and Steve, when people talk about their families, like you did with me, people open up like a book. People love talking about their families and they get emotional.
You do the same
And
thing. You talk about your daughter.
well, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. And now, now that I have a 1-year-old grandson, uh, I am watching all kinds of kid shows and singing to him. And it's become to a point where, I might as well be a Sesame Street character because I know all the songs.
Let me follow up on what you just said about long form conversation. My wife, Jennifer, loves podcasts, but doesn't, she listens. Here's the question as the quintessential broadcaster, particularly in the area of radio. We chose to have, this is Media Matters, produced by the Adubato Center for Media Leadership. I told our team that I wanted to put this on video. In my head, I can't, I love radio, particularly as a kid, listening to the World Series at Ridge Street School in Newark. And in the 60s and 70s, I had the radio. And when I wasn't supposed to at 3 o'clock in the afternoon game, I get all that. But we chose to do this video. You got the radio stuff. Do you, what do you think the biggest difference is, Doug, between a podcast that's purely audio versus a podcast that has video?
Two different things, but with mine, I do it both video and audio,
No.
uh, because people want to see. The video podcast is the most popular because people can actually watch it and enjoy it.
Right.
But the only difference is if you want to have a really involved show that has instrumental music, that might have, very clever editing involved with bringing in guests and things like that. That's where it will, fall short sometimes on the video side. But I think more importantly, people want to see their guests. They want to see the reaction on people's faces. They want to see, you can't hide that. You can't hide that you're emotional, Steve, when you were talking about your dad. You can hide it a little bit on radio. You can't hide it on TV, and you can't hide it on video. And I think it's a very effective way. Plus, I always bring up, hey, what's that book behind you there, Steve, that says, The Enemy of the People? And that's where I get some of the most fascinating stories from guests, not from the questions that I had,
What
anticipated
to see?
asking them, right?
Well, the first thing I asked you, what I ask you as we started the podcast about,
Well,
I see Don Newcomb, I see the great Yogi Berra, and then I see the incomparable Roberto Clemente, and I go, wow, Doug's got an incredible background. And by the way, do you have over your left shoulder, is that a football field?
that's actually a puzzle of the Steelers field. Yes. And to my over my left shoulder here is a picture of my lady Rose with Pete Rose that they met in Las Vegas. And she said, if I would have married Pete, my name would have been Rose Rose. So
Okay.
that's
By the way, you mentioned the football field in Pittsburgh. Did you not do, we were doing a tribute to the great Franco Harris. Did you provide, and I'll remember them series with my colleague, executive producer and anchor with me, Jackie Chicarico. You talked about Franco Harris with us, didn't you?
I may have some
You
of
did.
my Franco Harris stories. I have to share one with you real
Go ahead.
quick.
Before we wrap up, go ahead. Give us a Franco story.
Okay. So I'm doing play-by-play of a high school championship for another radio station before I moved to WBGO, WOBM. And uh,
Where?
it was at Rancocas Valley High School, which is where Franco Harris played his high school football there in New Jersey.
Pittsburgh?
New Jersey.
Oh, South Jersey.
Yeah.
Okay, go
So
ahead.
so before the game, I'm looking for material to talk about, right? And I know Franco played there. I go on the field, I start going into the end zone, trying to be nostalgic, and start asking everybody, hey, do you know about Franco Harris? Nobody. So I went up back to the booth. I slammed my headphones down. And I said, does anybody know anything about Franco Harris? And then behind me goes, what do you want to know? I said, everything. He goes, okay, I was his coach. So he went on to tell me that Franco, during his freshman year in high school, did not show up for morning practice in a two-a-day. Showed up in the afternoon, looked pretty good for a freshman. Next day, doesn't show up in the morning. Like, what's up with this kid? He shows up in the afternoon, looks great. So the Harris family lived a few doors down from the field. He goes down, raps on the door, and a lot of people know that Franco had an Italian mom, right?
Right.
So So he raps on the door, and there's Mrs. Harris. And he goes, Mrs. Harris, why isn't Franco coming to the morning practices? My son, he needs his sleep. He said, well, you better tell his son he better get his blank up on the field or he's not going to play for me. First time he touched the ball in high school, he went 80 yards for a touchdown, was the greatest player the guy ever coached. And
Right.
when he went to Penn State, coach took him to see Joe Paterno. Paterno said, you and Lydell Mitchell, both in the same room, will be my backs for the next 4 years. They were. And then the 25th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception, Franco does not forget the people who are instrumental. He called coach and had a limo pick him up, take him to the ceremony. That was Franco Harris.
I'm just realizing as Doug was telling the story, we actually had Franco Harris's son on Remember Them talking about his dad. And Franco Harris was number 32.
Yes, he
Manny
was.
Ian was 35, but the great Franco Harris, Italian mom, who my dad, this is my dad invited Franco Harris's mother and Franco Harris to my dad's, the North Ward Center in Newark, a community organization my dad founded. Doug's got a better story, but my father was like, I want to meet the Italian mother. She was about 5 foot tall, and Franco Harris is big, strong. Never mind. Hey, Doug, thank you for being the first outside guest, if you will, on Media Matters, produced by our Center for Media Leadership. Hey, Doug, my friend, you have made an incredible contribution as a media leader. You'll continue to do important work. And I just thank you and wish you all the best. Thanks, Doug.
Thanks, Steve. It's an honor to be on your show anytime. I look forward to the next time.
You got it. For our team at Media Matters and the Adubato Center for Media Leadership, we thank you so much for checking out our podcast. See you next time.